institutions are like people. They have personalities and they have these moments of dramatic change, and big shifts in their lives. And all that whole fabric of institutional memory is what helps tell us who we are.
I'm looking to get to the Bible training school.
You sure you have the right town?
If this is Cleveland, Tennessee. It says right here in the Evangel.
Oh, yeah. This looks to be A.J. Tomlinson's enterprise. Just follow this road down about a mile. Big oak tree, white porch.
Thank you. Sister Tomlinson, I'm Jessie Capshaw from North Carolina.
Do you mean W.A. Capshaw's daughter? Why, the last time I saw you, you were... My, how you've grown. Are you here for the school?
Yes, ma'am, and I'm right sorry for showing up so late. I have my first week's tuition right here.
Don't you worry about that. Here, I'll take this to your room. We'd best be getting you across the street. Sister Chambers does not take kindly to tardiness.
This school is for the learning of both male and female, but you will not be allowed to form any intimacy outside of Christian fellowship. We consider a hint to the wise on this sufficient. Your teacher for this term is Sister Nora Chambers. She has a reputation as a great Church of God evangelist and a true servant of the Lord. And though she may lack experience in the teaching field, as I assured the elders, she has the consecrated talents and ability to teach this class. Sister Chambers, class is yours.
Thank you, Brother Tomlinson. God wants to do something. Second Timothy 2:15 reads, "Study to show thyself approved to God, a workman that needeth not be ashamed, rightly dividing the word of truth." Please stand, miss.
Didn't mean to interrupt.
Are you properly enrolled?
No, ma'am. My church raised just enough funds yesterday. I traveled all night to get here.
And what is your age? And don't you think of lying.
I'm 14 years old, but as hardworking as anybody older.
This is W.A.'s daughter, the North Carolina overseer.
Does his position grant her the ability to read? We agreed that everyone must be...
Therefore, if you want to become better equipped to teach the Scripture, if you want to become a better worker for the Lord, you should take this course of Bible training.
It also states, this is not a school for children. It is for grown-ups who want to prepare for the Lord's work. No others will be admitted.
I may yet be young, but I'm saved, sanctified, and filled with the same Holy Ghost as anybody else here. When I was a little girl, my mama died from sickness. But I always thank God because I have a good father. As long as I can remember, I've been traveling with him and helping him oversee the congregation back home. But he sent me here. The whole congregation sent me here, so that I might be able to study the Bible and music and be a better help to Papa in his work. So, Sister Chambers, with all respect due, I'm not going back till I get what they sent me for.
Have a seat, Miss Capshaw. I find it only fitting with Miss Capshaw's addition that there would be 12 in the class. Just as Jesus equipped those first disciples to multiply, so I see that is what is happening here. God wants to do something with each of you, and even with me. In 100 years, I don't rightly know how this room will have affected the whole world. And I don't think that that knowledge is important right now. But we must seek Him, and we must have faith in the good Lord to take care of the rest.
January 1st, 9:30 a.m. Students came from different states. The superintendent at the time was A.J. Tomlinson, and he welcomed the students and then turned the class over to Nora Chambers, who was the first teacher for the Bible school.
A.J. Tomlinson, it was his idea to have the school, and as was the case then, he would come up with an idea and the General Assembly would say, all right, you do it. And not only did he serve as general overseer, but he also served as the first superintendent of the school, which would have been the title used at that time.
They wanted it to be legitimate, so they wanted the best educated people, and they always did want the best educated people possible to teach the students. And in this case, the choice was really clear as Nora Chambers.
Nora Chambers had attended Holmes Bible College, and she had also been an evangelist of the gospel, a very powerful evangelist.
Women barely had the right to vote in 1918. They were not seen as an important part of society.
She was hesitant at first to assume the role of teacher, thinking that a man should be in that position, but she had the confidence of the general leaders of the church, and she finally accepted that role.
That was astounding that a woman was hired to teach Bible, and that's how we started.
Well, the Church of God was just over 30 years old, but there was a great emphasis on evangelism.
It wasn't trying to start a college in any of the sorts of ways we would think about a college. It was trying to start a really specific Bible study to train ministers or Sunday school teachers or people to be working in the Church of God.
There was a deep belief that the Lord was coming soon, And if they were going to reach the harvest, they needed training in order to be able to do it.
So we began with 12 students in 1918. They were different ages. You had married students, you had single students. The youngest was 14-year-old Jessie Capshaw, the daughter of a minister and administrator for the church in North Carolina.
And she didn't have anything going for her. She could play the banjo and she could play the drums, and that was the sum of her abilities. She'd done some preaching, and her mother had just died, and her father wanted her to help him in his ministry, so he sent her to BTS, and she came on the train, a little 14-year-old girl coming by herself.
The very next year, a correspondence course started, and within a year, 788 students are enrolled in the correspondence course.
Interestingly, when the General Assembly decided to have a school, they didn't think through where would students live and where would students eat. The students actually ended up living and eating in the General Overseer's home, which was just across the street. They lived in the house, they ate at the family table, although by the second term, they expanded the kitchen so they could put in a bigger table.
Once people began to attend the Bible training school, they realized that they also need to work on some other basics like literacy or geography. And so the curriculum begins to expand, but always in support of that original thing, which is how to best understand the Bible.
In the 30s, we began to offer a 2-year collegiate program.
The first program was a commercial or business program. And then that same year, there was a music program started.
One of the things you see about the students when they pose for photographs in the past is they all have their instruments. So guitars, mandolins, tambourines, but many of them have that instrument as well as the Bible in the other hand.
In 1930, the school secured Otis McCoy to begin the music program. He had been trained at the Vaughn Conservatory in Lawrenceburg and brought great structure as well as expertise into teaching students not only in voice but also in instrumentation.
The Bible training school was just a branch of the Church of God. It wasn't really a separate institution. So it shared resources and facilities and rooms with the church.
By the mid to late 30s, the school was meeting in what was called the Church of God Auditorium, and the reality is it was not in good physical condition. When Murphy College or Murphy Institute in Sevierville wound up being available, the church decided that it was better to have an actual college property versus trying to make do in this assembly auditorium building.
The act of the Bible training school leaving Cleveland was important to go to Sevierville, to find that identity, to be outside of sort of the immediate gaze of the church administration.
The school was able to kind of get outside of that box and help learn who they were and began to expand and develop programs that ultimately would lead to the liberal arts program.
They had music lessons, they had shorthand lessons, they started a 2-year liberal arts, they called it junior college. There were correspondence courses as well as religious education. So there was a lot going on there and it was very successful.
It was a much quieter, simple living atmosphere in Sevierville than Cleveland. It was really good, and I enjoyed my years in Sevierville.
Interesting in this era is the dating methods. If a guy saw a girl that he thought, I want to take on a date, he couldn't just ask her. He had to fill out a form that was given to the Dean of Men, who then gave it to the Dean of Women, who gave it to the female. And the response of the female went back through those same channels, the Dean of Women, the Dean of Men, to the male student. And usually it was sharing a meal in the dining hall.
Sunday was the time you could be with your boyfriend or girlfriend. But I had a studio upstairs that I could leave the window open, play a special song, and they would tell my boyfriend, hey, that's Evelyn's song. And he'd come up and hug me and kiss me, you know, and that was rules that you couldn't go by. You never could do that. And we both got demerits, 99 demerits.
There was a date night on Friday, and date night was in the cafeteria, and they'd line up 4 or 5 tables down the middle of the cafeteria, And men would approach from one side, women from the other side, with chaperones circling the table, and they could have conversations. That evolves to dates off-campus dating. But originally off-campus dating, you always had to have a chaperone. The chaperones were usually faculty members or administrative members. Then the next big move, and this was in the 1950s, was double dating. So they assumed that if you had two couples together, that nothing could go wrong.
This is a letter from my mom, who was a BTS student in 1941, to my dad, who was a young minister out preaching revivals. They wrote back and forth constantly, and she talked about life at BTS. He talked about life on the road, but she jumps right in. Dearest Charles, we've been rushed this week, attending services each night and continuing with our classes. Well, isn't that something Lee students still complain about during convocation? She's talking about convocation. They called it revival back then. One of the things that impresses me reading these letters is how much they went to church and what a big part of life church was for them. And maybe because it's my mom, she was a pretty spiritual gal, but I don't think so. I think church was the major form of entertainment. It was what people were there for. Another thing that impresses me reading these is the role of music at Lee. She's constantly referring to quartets and trios and solos and congregational singing. And, that just jumps out at you. And I think to anyone who's making the bridge from 80 years ago to today at Lee, these commonalities jump out there. Music is one of them. You can look at those early rollout pictures from 38, 39, and 40, and you can see the growth. It is a visibly larger crowd in 39 than it was 38 and again in 40. I'll tell you another thing is the role the way women were given the pulpit and given a lead in worship was remarkable when you consider you're talking about 1940. She talks about a chapel. I'm reading from an entry that fall. Sister Pearl Stark has been here several days. Pearl Stark was a missionary. She showed her pictures Tuesday and Wednesday night and lectured on missions in Africa. I hadn't had the privilege of meeting her before. It made me more thankful to God. Brother Tharp came over to see me Sunday night about 9:30. He asked me to speak Sunday night, and I felt faint. I hesitated for a moment. But by faith in God, I did my best, and He wonderfully helped me. That's humility speak for I nailed it. There are other things that are in here that talk about student life. Early 41, she says, I've just returned from a meeting of the annual staff. Yes, the junior class has decided to have an annual published. Personally, I don't think it's such a brilliant idea to start this late in the term with practically no finances. The class has more enthusiasm and faith concerning the matter than I have. Here's hoping they're right. This annual she's talking about which she's rather pessimistic, actually did occur, and it came out the next year, and they called it the Vindagua. At one point, describing her semester to Dad, she says, I'm taking 5 subjects besides piano and voice. Bible 1, Bible 2, church history, homiletics, which is preaching, and sight singing and theory. So, it was all religion all the time. I think there was a sense of greatness. Remember, Franklin D. Roosevelt said in one of his great speeches, this generation has a rendezvous with destiny. Well, he was talking about the Second World War. But I think Charles Conn and Ray Hughes and Roosevelt Miller and felt like they had a rendezvous with destiny. And they did. They did. They became the leaders of a great institution eventually.
The triumphal procession roars its way uptown. In its most uproarious reception of the war, New York pays tribute to fighting men of the United Nations.
World War II was coming to an end, and we were offering the GI Bill to those who had served in the war. So many young men and their families were going off to school. And so we were growing, so much so that we had to put up a temporary trailer park in Sevierville to house many of the young men and their families who were coming.
They were cramped. It was distant. It's up in northeast Tennessee. And to return back to Cleveland when Bob Jones' campus became open was just an opportunity they couldn't pass up.
So suddenly, there opened up an already constructed college campus that was the right size for us at the time. So we were able to get it for $1.5 million.
The school had been moving toward this idea of accreditation and had hired 2 individuals for administration with master's degrees. Earl Tapley as vice president and Mary Elizabeth Harrison Green as principal of the high school. Earl Tapley was a young pastor who arrived at the Bible school in the mid-1930s, and also while he is a student, he is a janitor for the school to help pay for his tuition. Then he goes on to earn the full bachelor's degree and a graduate degree. Comes back in 1946 as the first vice president for the school and is one of the key visionaries during that time.
When they made the transition to Cleveland, many people thought that it ought to receive a name, but what to name it? By this time, the second president or superintendent, F.J. Lee, who had gone on to be general overseer and had died in office, was a hero in the minds of many. And so he was suggested by Earl Tapley, who had been dean at the time, as someone to name the school after. There was some opposition, however. For instance, a group of ministers in South Carolina sent a petition that it ought to be called Church of God College. But leadership saw better and chose the name Lee College.
It was announced officially on commencement day, 1947, the last commencement in Sevierville before the return to Cleveland in the fall of that year.
47 to 60, it was sort of getting its rhythm as a college and going through all these different types of, we got an academy, we got a liberal arts program, we got a Bible college program, we got a 4-year, a 2-year, a school of music even at one time, which I think they only graduated one person from a 4-year school of music.
You would expect that when the school moved back to Cleveland that it would boom. It had done really well in Sevierville. The population was over 600 students. You have a brand new campus that they're extremely proud of. And you have GI Bill support. There are a lot of things going well for the church. You have people moving into the middle class that wanted this new education. Surprisingly, just the opposite takes place.
The academic developments and advancements made in the late 40s and early 50s really became too much too soon for the comfort level of the church, and that created some tension between the church and the college administration.
The decade of the 50s was not a good decade for Lee College at the time. Part of it was frequent transition in leadership. Part of it was probably the fact that the denomination was going through growing pains and identity pains in terms of who we might be as a people.
It's important to remember that the school, that Lee College, was serving the Church of God, not the other way around. So when the school chose a major hire or wanted to build a building or wanted to actually put new carpet in a dorm, that was something that was approved by the church administration. Often the General Assembly would vote on that. So the school existed to serve the church, and the school really followed the church. The school didn't lead the church.
Most of the students came from the denomination. Many of the dollars that supported the school came from the denomination. That sometimes was very beneficial, fundraising. It was sometimes problematic. If a faculty member at Lee might teach something that some ministers were against, they might want to comment.
But ultimately, the school was able to, and very vigorously in publications, told its constituents that we're not abandoning the church, we're not abandoning Pentecostalism, we're not abandoning the fundamentals of what it means to be a member of the Church of God. And that helps reconcile that split within the church.
Dr. Leonard Carroll was a Church of God preacher. He was a strict disciplinarian. He wanted to enforce the traditional rules of student conduct. And so it made it a lot of tension There was actually a student uprising.
There were some students who became a little dissatisfied with Dr. Carroll because of his being so strict. And they decided to organize a kind of revolt. They got together and they came across where the president's office is right now, is where Dr. Carroll's office was. So it was led, interestingly enough, by a female student. So they were standing out on those steps, near those steps, and they were hollering out at the office of the president, "We won't take this anymore, this must stop." I will tell you, I was not a part of that. I was on the outside looking in, but I won't ever forget the day. And this was going on for a while, and I guess after a while, President Carroll just became tired of that. And so while they were screaming, "We won't stop until something is done," he stepped out onto the porch there where the steps are, looked at the students and, "Can everybody hear me?" at a commanding voice, and of course everybody did. They stopped for a moment. He said, "This is the end of whatever it is you are doing. If I hear one more word, I will be dealing with you personally in terms of discipline. So my advice is to stop whatever you're doing and go back to your dorms." And he turned around and went back into his office. Everybody left. That was the end of the revolt. Lee was at one of its lowest ebbs in terms of numbers of students, probably less than 300 students at one point. Morale was very low on the campus, and the faculty were saying things like, "Well, those guys over there, those guys on the hill," as they would say, "really don't know how to pick presidents. We ought to pick the president." And what in essence happened is they petitioned the committee for Rufus Platt to become the president.
I served for 4 different presidents for 27 years, from 1957 until 1984. I like to say I grew up in the president's office. Dr. R.L. Platt, he was a really good man, a good educator, but he was promoted above his ability. But he was only here 3 years, and you know, everything started going down financially and numbers, so they knew we had to do something. In fact, I can remember one week wondering if we were going to get paid that week. So that's how serious it was back then.
The church was actually directly supporting the school. They were making appropriations just to keep the doors open. The student population had been cut in half. There was deferred maintenance on the buildings. And I think that comes down to transition. It comes down to a transition from one model, Bible training school, to this new model, which will eventually become a liberal arts college by 1969. Transitions are difficult, and this transition was not easy for the church.
But it was really not until the 60s when a very popular minister by the name of Ray Hughes was brought to campus that the school began to see significant growth here in Cleveland.
Most of the people that came into the presidency before Hughes were towards the end of their career. Hughes was young, 36 years old. He had been in charge of youth in the church. So they chose a man they thought would connect well and naturally with 17 and 18-year-olds, the people that you want in this new sort of developing liberal arts model.
He was a charismatic figure, a terrific speaker. He was still young and had a lot of vim and vigor, and he was the kind of guy who attracted followers.
So when he came in, he had, I think, a vision. He had experience with young people, and he had that drive that he expected to be communicated to other people.
It was like a tornado just blew in because the atmosphere changed. You know, everything was, you know, let's do this. We're going to Onward to 600, which people were laughing about him for saying Onward to 600.
By 62, we'd gone over that. If we had 650 students, and finally we hit 700, we thought, this is working. Let's do more.
He was very progressive. He brought varsity sports, just to use an example. When I was a student here, it would have been unthinkable for us to have a varsity basketball, you know, because the codes, you know, you don't play in long pants.
There was a thing called a social service organization. And it was a male group at that time, the very first one, Upsilon. We were invited, myself and a professor at the time, Don Bowdle, to consider forming another group, Alpha Gamma Chi. And then came a couple of women's group, that group of 4 that became really, I think, wonderful, positive additions to life at Lee. An opportunity for students to socialize, build lifelong friendships, and then an opportunity to do good things in the community.
Not only did Ray Hughes serve as president of Lee, but the Church of God had a radio program at the time called Forward in Faith, and he became the radio speaker.
Reverend Ray H. Hughes, radio minister for Forward in Faith and president of Lee College, has a message for you.
It is my firm belief that these are the closing days of time. The 0 hour is fast approaching, and the final page of human history will soon be written. One needs no gift
He
of prophecy
would be president during the week and go on the road on weekends and preach and raise money for the school and raise awareness of the school. And the school did very well during the 6 years that he was serving as president.
My first view of Lee College was breathtaking. I hadn't imagined that the campus was so attractive and spacious. The collegiate atmosphere really took over when I began to get into my classes. The highlight of my day came to be the challenging classroom sessions. In each class, I received personal attention. Nancy took a real interest in her classes. In addition to the required liberal arts study, she was taking home economic courses, which included sewing and cooking.
It is Sunday evening, and my heart always thrills as I view the student body gathering for worship. Not long ago, Joe and Nancy were in this group, but now they are facing the realities of life with confidence. They are symbolic of thousands of alumni throughout the world to whom Lee has been a guiding star. What will your decision be? Tomorrow, you will be what you purpose today. Lee offers to help you reach your goal. Remember, you are making a decision for destiny.
By 1960, in the Deep South, in public schools, less than 1% of children in the Deep South went to desegregated schools. So this is a slow process. And Lee's no different. In 1966 then, when the school admits its first 3 African American students, that's a cautious approach. They thought they were admitting 2. What was surprising to Lee's administration is that there was actually a 3rd African American they admitted, but they thought she was white. On the application forms, there was no box to check if you were African American, because that had been illegal, but you had to attach your picture. And one of those students, Hazel Edwards, had attached her picture, but she's pretty light-skinned. She straightened her hair, and so they thought she was white.
At the time, I just wanted an education. I did not go there to integrate. I went there to get an education. It just so happened I went in the mid-60s, and not everybody was ready for me. I believe I stayed in Simmons Hall. When I got there, I got this letter from the Dean of Women, or a note, and it said to come to her office. Well, I couldn't imagine why the Dean of Women would have wanted me to come to her office. But she said, Mary, your roommate, we've asked her to move out of the room. And the reason for that is we've been told that her dad got very upset when he found out that her little sister had a black teacher. So we feel that if he learns that you are living with Mary, that Mary has a black roommate, that he would be really upset. And so we've asked Mary to move several times, but she won't move. So the tears started to roll, and of course the Dean of Women gave me something to wipe my eyes, and she went on to tell me it didn't matter to her, but you know, they just didn't want any trouble. So she said, one of you will have to move. So I went back to my room and I packed up Mary's things. And when she came, I said, Mary, I don't want you to feel that you have to stay here to keep from hurting my feelings. It's okay. You can go. So she moved next door. We had a wall between us and all was well. As I look back though, I would do it all over again. I would stay there the same year. I would endure whatever I had to endure to do what I did because the good outweighed the bad, far outweighed the bad.
This turned out to be a really good thing because it accelerated the process. What might have been slower turns out to be quickly. Hazel forced the issue.
I think there was some integration right from the start. That is, the young woman who was my student worker was inducted into Delta Zeta Tau, and others were in Sigma, and her fiance was in Chi. So right from the beginning, they were welcomed into these groups.
Things like Pioneers for Christ, which was a religious service institution, and on the athletic teams.
They formed the evangelistic singers because they wouldn't be accepted in white churches when they went off with Pioneers for Christ. But that was off campus where they weren't welcome in white churches. But on campus, they pretty much permeated the social life of the campus.
This is the period when the presidents, especially Ray Hughes, started this, actively pursued accreditation for the liberal arts college from SACS. And I really think that Ray Hughes thought in his 6 years that he would get that done. And it turns out that every time a SACS visit took place, that they left encouraging Lee, but also saying, you're not there yet.
Lee, at the time, leading up to accreditation, was trying to be all things for all people.
There was actually a composite of 4 different schools sharing the same campus, the same facilities, the same faculty, and the same programs. Involved high school students, the Lee Academy, junior college students, which is what I was in, a 4-year Bible college that had been begun in 1953, and the remnants of BTS for non-collegiate ministerial training, which was called the Division of Religious Education at that time.
Lee often was still using professors that didn't have bachelor's degrees. Roughly half the faculty had attended the Bible training school, and they had 2-year or 3-year degrees, but not bachelor's degrees, which made perfect sense in a Bible training school model, not so much otherwise.
As the school became more professional and more oriented toward accreditation, that caused some concern in the church. And I can't even begin to describe how much Lee was part of the church in those days.
In '68, Don Altman was brought in as vice president, and he came with the determination to help get the accreditation that was needed.
In 1968, little did we know, he had no idea what he was faced with, nor I, that the letter was going to come from SACS, that it wasn't that you're not going to be accredited, it was you are not accredited. We lost our accreditation. And there was a period of time there where the whole thing was just hanging in the balance. We'll lose this whole thing. Federal aid, we'll lose our reputation. This is really going to be a bad time. And so I said to Don, you know, I've got an idea, something that could help us. Well, what is that? He said, well, I've got this friend. The guy's name was David Kelly. He and I were in a doctoral program together at Florida State. And I said, he works for the Southern Association. Maybe he could help us. Well, Altman's response was, you really think we could talk to him? And I said, well, I think so. And he said, well, let's do it, set it up. And I said, okay, I'll try. When do you want to set it up? He said, tonight. This was like late in the afternoon. So I go to the phone book and find David Kelly's address where he lives, and I find his phone number. And I call him. He must have been terribly surprised. I said, this is Delton calling. How you doing, man? He said, yeah, it's great to hear from you. What are you doing tonight? And he said, I'm at home with my kids. Tough day at the office. And I said, would you entertain the possibility of having a couple of visitors? Well, this guy's one of those guys, he's just too nice. So he said, well, let me check it out with my wife. And he came back in a moment, he said, well, you want to come over? I said, yes, I'd love to. He said, well, where are you? We're in Tennessee. So we jump in the car and we drive as fast as we can to Atlanta, Georgia. And we knocked on his door about 9 or 9:30, as I recall it. Came in and laid the case out. Here's where we are. We're in trouble, just trying to find somebody to tell us what could be done. Can you help us? So we laid everything out on his living room floor in that apartment and stayed there as long as he would let us, or put it another way, as long as his wife would let us stay, which, as I recall, was about 11 o'clock at night or something, getting up close to midnight. And he said, okay, guys, this is what I say. And I said to him, well, can we see Barker? And he said, well, I'll call him first thing in the morning to see if you can get an appointment with him. Well, that was good enough for us. And the next morning at 9 o'clock, we went to John Barker's office over at the Sachs building, and he gave a list of things that we had to do, irrevocable. He said, if you will go home, get your president to sign off on this, then I'll take it to my advisors and my counsel and see what can be done. As a result of that, we went from being fully unaccredited until December of 1969, when it was announced that Lee College was now accredited by the Southern Association as a liberal arts college.
And it was such a huge deal. We had Dr. Cross actually called a day off school. So we had a day off just to celebrate getting the good news from Sachs, because there was not 1 minute of peace until that happened, that people were sure that it was going to happen until it did. And of course there was a fear that we were going to become secular and that the church was losing what it had really paid for, which was a way to train ministers. But Lee was at that point becoming successful, and there's nothing to argue like success.
President Hughes served from 60 to 66. It was a rocket ride, great period of transformational change. Then Cross came in from 66 to 70 and was sort of cleaning up after Hughes and kind of, in a way that 10 years was the Hughes ascendancy and then Cross stabilizing. Okay, then in 70, President Conn came in.
And Dr. Conn also didn't have a big history in higher ed, but he loved all of it. And so when he came to Lee, and we were really trying to develop this ethos of a liberal arts college as opposed to a Bible college, it was like all the windows were thrown open. He was such a breath of fresh air, and he really ushered in a renaissance. And I would say that from my perspective, that's really kind of when the Lee we know now actually began.
Charles W. Conn, as president, helped to develop a culture of real academic quality, a culture that emphasized intellectuality, that saw the life of the mind as just as important as the life of the spirit.
There's a really ironic thing about Charles Conn that's really counterintuitive. He never graduated from college. He grew up in the home of a sharecropper from hardscrabble, blue collar and down, deep South family. President Conn made this a kinder, gentler college.
At Lee, we value your potential. Yes, your potential to become successful as you train to be an educator, musician, scientist, minister, lawyer, or business person. Lee College is a 4-year, fully accredited Christian college, a place where you are assured of academic excellence in an atmosphere which is conducive to the Pentecostal Christian commitment. At Lee, we are committed to serving those students who select our programs of study.
Lee College is a beautiful place to be. The lovely Alumni Plaza and walkway lead you to the Charles W. Conn Center for Performing Arts and Christian Studies. It breathes the life of Lee College across the campus and the entire community. Study in the Pentecostal Research Center, competition at the Stanley Butler Athletic Field, or family life in the Carroll Court Apartments. Life is beautiful at Lee College.
In the early 80s, the institution fell on some hard times.
And it was a combination of things that happened. We lost our federal grants, we lost our endowment, interest rates skyrocketed. We'd all been working really hard to keep the school afloat, to save it. We'd given our raises back so that we wouldn't have to let anybody go. So we hadn't had raises for a few years. And so the church's idea was that they should send Ray Hughes back because he had saved the school before. But this was quite a bit later, and his perspective had changed. He had been more progressive, and he had kind of swung the other way.
I've always wished he hadn't have come back in a way, because I think for his legacy, the first 6 years would have been better than coming back. Lee had changed a lot. We had all changed a lot in that length of time. But I guess at times he kind of remembered what worked in the 60s, but it didn't necessarily always work in the 80s.
And so he did some sort of draconian things. He said everybody has to go to church on Sunday. And so he would send the dorm people through the dorm to make sure everybody was out of their room. And of course, being out of your room and being at church are two different things. Andrea Dismukes tells a story of hiding in the bathroom by crouching on the toilet, sitting up on the toilet so that her feet wouldn't show below the stall when they came to check for them to make sure they were out on Sunday morning. So it was kind of jarring for people who'd been in the golden age of the first Charles Conn presidency to be put under that kind of cap.
Well, I had completed my term as General Director of Youth and Christian Education and was looking forward to being appointed as State Overseer. In fact, I'd been told that that's exactly where I would be going and what I would be doing. And then my family and I took a vacation. We were in London, England. I got a call from Cleveland, Tennessee, and found out that I was being appointed as president of Lee College. And I remember just sitting down and saying, "Are you guys sure? I mean, this is such a surprise. I had no idea that I was even being considered." So it was not something that I had in mind to do, but my family and I prayed about it and finally said, okay, if this is what the executive committee wants, this is what we'll do. But then I later found out that the board of directors had a different idea.
Actually, at that moment, our board elected Dr. Conn to be president.
The board wanted Paul Conn, one of our brilliant faculty members, as the president.
But our president had always been either the forthcoming or the immediate past general overseer. And so he wasn't on that track. And the church fathers were nervous about him being president.
When I got the word that the vote had been taken and that Paul Conn had received one more vote than I had received, and I remembered walking outside of the apartment, looking up at the sky, at the stars, and feeling so relieved, and actually saying, "Thank you, God, for delivering me from this responsibility."
Some of the conservative forces and the conservative segment felt that Lamar Bass would be able to move the school forward, without risk in terms of alienating the more conservative segments of the church.
I get the call from Paul Walker, who was the chairman of the board, and he said to Lamar, this thing is not going to work out. There's a difference between the board of directors and the fathers of the church, and so get ready. You're going to get the call because you will get the vote. And then I'd always basically said yes to the leaders of the church. So I said, fine, yes, I'll accept the responsibility if you will give me your support. And so that's how I became president of Lee. The college had gone through a loss of revenue because of a bad investment. Plus, the school was in some difficulty with the Southern Association. So I immediately started with a recruitment plan. When everybody else was gone, no one but the security people, I would come in and spend hours looking at the books and looking over the enrollment. Our enrollment that first year jumped from 900 and something to around 1,100 students. We had a big jump. And the second year, even another increase.
He did a lot of really smart financial things to get us back on our footing. And then after he was there for a semester, he asked Dr. Conn to come and be his vice president.
The enrollment process and some of the structures needed fixing, and I needed help.
He came to my little office, my little cubicle, faculty office.
So I pulled up a chair, sat down in front of him, and said, okay, here's the deal. I want you to be my executive vice president. This school needs your voice, and I believe you have a future in this institution.
That's what he laid out for me. It's kind of like, yeah, I'm a dreamer, but you're a technician, so would you come be my technician?
After a weekend of praying with he and Darlie, and he said, you know, I believe this is what God has in mind for me, and I'm ready to take on that responsibility. And we got down and prayed together, and that was the beginning of this relationship.
And you have this guy who was chosen and then passed over, working side by side with the guy who passed over him, although it was not his intention. He hadn't done it on purpose, but they both end up in these roles. And Dr. Vest knows Dr. Conn can help me. And Dr. Conn thinks, yeah, I'll do it. Because he's not thinking about his own position. He's thinking about, well, this is Lee. We've been working on this for years, and I'm not going to sabotage it now. So he not only came aboard to help him, but he did it with all his heart.
And you know what I've said to so many people who said, you know, that must have been an uncomfortable kind of situation for you. And my response was absolutely not. I mean, it was the first time that I got to play the role of John the Baptist. You know, it's kind of like I'm here preparing the way. And that's exactly what I think happened, is that I don't know that Paul Conn would have ever been president had it not been for those 2 years, because from here, in 2 years, I was elected to the executive committee and had the opportunity of nominating Paul Conn as president.
And that, of course, set the stage for the new era, which began in '86 when Dr. Conn was appointed president.
It has been said on several occasions that this presidency marks the passing of a torch. Some have observed that in a certain sense I represent a new generation of leadership. And it is natural that some should wonder whether the Lee College flame will burn as brightly or as purely in the hands of this generation. Let me pledge to you, on behalf of all those others whom I represent, that you are passing the torch to a generation that believes intensely in the values which I have expressed today. We understand the magic in this place. Lee College is not a hastily constructed, prefabricated campus. It did not come from the action of a planning board or a single stroke of the pen of an official. It has been built brick by brick, inch by inch, prayer by prayer, dream by dream, by the collective energies and passions of thousands of men and women. And we are the recipients of this great gift from them.
I'll never forget the excitement that filled the air that day, and we felt a special energy in the place. But it wasn't just here in that moment. We knew that Lee was in for some great days ahead of itself.
He spoke about this place that I did not know existed, but what could be. I was convinced that day that this place mattered.
And he was so young, and he was so idealistic and so visionary.
He understood the academic standards, academic aspirations of faculty, and the suffering that we had gone through.
We knew Paul Conn as being very student-focused, and that was evident as a teacher, and that was evident even more so as the president.
He worked longer and harder than anybody else in the community, and we could all see it.
You just can't believe what it was like. Nobody could keep up with him. He was here when we got here. He was here when we left.
You know, in 1986, we had lots of empty classroom space. We didn't need new space. We needed a new mindset, a new attitude, and a new ability to recruit students. So you don't do that by building a new academic building. You do that with something that visually, immediately says growth, development, progress, hope, the future. That's why my first big project was the street project. Church Street ran right through our campus from 11th to 15th, and we were trying to close most of that. Clevelanders who were accustomed to driving up and down Church Street were astounded at the thought that it would be closed and given to Lee. So it was very controversial. There were 5 members of the city commission in those days, and so we won that vote by 3-2. We got advice from somebody down at City Hall that said, Paul, if you don't physically tear up that street quickly, they're going to stop you. And we get an injunction, and then they'll file some kind of suit, and then it'll take you 2 or 3 years, and who knows what will happen. But if you tear the street up, they're not going to go back in and rebuild the street in order to stop you. So if I were you, the first day you are legally entitled to do so, I'd go tear the street up. That's exactly what we did. Sometime after midnight, we had the bulldozers all ready, and they went down there and the jackhammers, and they tore up 30 feet of curb, sidewalk, and pavement, put it on trucks and hauled it off. And one day it was just a street with some orange barrels out over it, and the next day it was a flower bed. A second big event was the Mylon Lefevre concert.
One day I was knocking and it was really shocking when the door flew open wide. I won't forget it 'cause that's the day that Jesus came and lived inside. Yeah, now I'm a free man.
The issue was a young Jesus rocker, Mylon Lefevre, who had a band called Broken Heart, was invited to sing here, and it created a huge furor and became a symbol for who controls Lee. I felt like students were watching, and not just students, young alums, people out there that hoped maybe we could change things. That's why it was worth fighting for, and that was why I actually put my presidency on the line that day.
Hallelujah, I'm a free man. Hey, hey, I will be
Today's high school graduate faces a challenge: how to choose the right college. Lee College meets that challenge. Here, education is designed to last. At Lee, classroom work is geared to specific careers in an atmosphere that develops the total person.
High school seniors need to decide what they want from a college. Almost all of them want a first-rate academic program. Of course, that's where you start. And most students want a campus where the facilities are good, where the people are friendly, where there are clubs and sports and all those things that make up college life. Lee College offers all that, but we offer something more than that. Lee College is a campus where Christ is King, and that makes a difference.
To Lee students, home is a 22-acre campus located in East Tennessee, graced with stately buildings and majestic trees.
What is Lee College in one word? Family.
Fantastic. And lots of fun.
Exciting.
Home.
If you are looking for an academically challenging campus where Christ is King, Lee College is the place for you.
Dr. Conn was a hands-on president, and everything was about students.
There was an energy in chapel, there was an energy in the classroom, there was an energy at athletic events. Everywhere you turned and everywhere you looked, students were excited about the growth that we were having at Lee, and we were proud. We were proud to be affiliated with Lee. We were proud to be Lee College students.
I'll never forget the cover of Charisma, the magazine, where he could have chosen very easily to surround himself with whatever image from the institution. He chose a group of students, and I think that totally echoes what kind of president he's been.
So we were making stuff up and developing curriculum, and like we took the Cambridge program that started during the early days of his presidency, and Who would think that a school our size with our resources could have a semester in Cambridge?
He asked me if I'd be interested in heading that up, and I said, look, I've never used a passport. I've never flown across the Atlantic. You know, all these things, I think it'd be better if you'd find somebody else. And that's when he brought in David Tilley.
And David Tilley came and became vice president and executive assistant to the president, and his task was to set up some kind of program somewhere in Europe where Lee students go dig in for a semester. That was the beginning of Global Perspectives.
Study abroad is like a mirror for students to see themselves and then come back and through reflection and processing, tie that in to what it means to be a good citizen, what it means to be a Christian.
We have students literally going all around the world in partnership with their academic departments to truly explore what it means to be perhaps a psychology student who's going to go visit Sigmund Freud's practice. So it comes alive in a whole new way. And not just in a way that promotes this international travel thing, but really promotes the idea of becoming global citizens.
So we did experience wonderful growth, fast growth, students and faculty and physical resources, and so it was really exciting.
We got students coming, enrollment's growing, we got to have a place to put them, let's build a new dorm.
So we had not built a dorm in, I believe, 20 years. And so we needed room. I was the first RD of Sharp Davis. It was just exciting. This was a first-class building.
And I asked the question, what building can I build that will make a difference in the lives of every student?
I think the very first thing he built was tennis courts. And we were just like, tennis courts, really? And then the rec center was maybe the next thing. And then he built the Dixon Center, like a theater. We're teaching in these shabby classrooms and you're building a theater, but he had this plan, he had this vision for what would make students' lives better. So he's building really nice dorms, he's building recreational facilities, he's making the campus look pretty so the students feel comfortable and happy when they're here.
The impetus for Lee's momentum started with enrollment in those years. It's a sign that people want to be here. It's a sign that students want to come and essentially buy the product that we were offering.
What's the perfect size for Lee? We asked that question thousands of times and we have an answer. And the answer is one more than last year.
There was a momentum, there was an energy. The idea was, how big can we go?
To burn at Ellis Hall. Firefighters do have the blaze under control. 90 to 100 responders came to Ellis Hall, the boys' dormitory on the campus of Lee College, just after 2:30. That's when the fire broke out. No cause is determined right now. As for the blaze, like you said, 17 people were brought into the hospital for face lacerations and minor burns and smoke inhalation. And the scene was very, very frightening. Many people saw actually what happened.
Fire officials say the flames spread so quickly there was little they could do.
Investigators are trying to find out who deliberately set this fire. They refuse to say how it was started or what was used to make the fire spread throughout the dormitory while more than 70 students were sleeping.
There were 76 beds in Ellis Hall. All of them occupied that fall. 74 of the boys were in bed that night, or in the dorm that night. But it was a chaotic scene, and it was like you could imagine. It was about 2:30 a.m.
Hey, man. Hey, this is my son, Gabe. Gabe, this is Rob.
It's never not with you. It's never if it gets too hot and you're sleeping, then you get up and you're like, oh, is something on fire? And I was awake. I was with a group of people on the first floor that was checking our lobby for guys from Hughes Hall who had been coming back and forth. And when we heard the fire alarm, we thought they got us. We thought they had pulled our fire alarm. So we ran down the hall towards the prayer room. And so I hit that door and I opened it up and there's just fire everywhere.
I remember thinking when we saw it that, did we do this? Did someone light a smoke bomb? And we, thinking, uh-oh.
Just so old. It was an old dorm and it was going so fast. That's what I remember, was from the moment we saw the fire at the end of the hall till the time it was at the main stairs. seemed like it was like that.
I remember crawling, and I just couldn't breathe. I remember feeling like I was lightheaded. As we stumbled out of the lobby, I look up, and my new roommate, Paul, he was banging on the window, and he couldn't get the window open, and so we just told him, jump through the window, and he disappeared for a second. He got a running start and came headfirst through that window. And Jonathan Spain was standing next to me, and we caught him like he was a 10-pound little baby. Just caught him in our arms and just set him down. And what we didn't know at the time, because one guy after another followed him right out that window, and that's where we didn't know there were about 30 guys huddled in the hallway that started coming out, and people just started catching them, and it just kind of became a thing to do. You caught one and you moved out of the way, and someone else caught one, and people were getting kicked in the face. It was chaos.
If you could have seen it and been there, you would never think anybody could have got out of there. There's so much fire.
Ultimately, 17 boys went to the hospital. 4 were seriously injured, stayed in the hospital for an extended period with burns. You didn't know then if there were going to be fatalities. The 4 boys who were burned in very serious condition.
It was a miracle that there wasn't someone that got killed from that.
I hope it's not too straightforward, and I do not want to be dramatic, but I do not want this lesson to be lost on the least observant one among us. We did not get lucky early Thursday morning. We had a miracle occur in our midst. We had a fire which, but for the miraculous grace of God, would have left us with body bags all the way out to the street. I would like to say, again, without being overly dramatic, but I would like to state the obvious, which each one of us has thought 100 times since early Thursday morning, that I offer my great gratitude and praise to the protective hand of God Almighty and the person of Jesus Christ of Nazareth.
The support was overwhelming. It seemed like it came from everywhere else. Specifically, one thing I do remember is that when they got us to the new dorm, when they got us to Tomlinson, where we were gonna be, it was like we showed up and everyone was there. Like the entire campus was there. You remember that?
Yeah,
and we had no idea. And we got there and it was like, I mean, just every it was like everybody was there. I still have photos of that day where just I couldn't believe just you could barely walk. Like we could barely get into our dorm because there were so many people there, you know, just encouraging us and cheering us on. And
do you remember they turned the Centenary Room and we called it Lee Mart? Like there were colleges all across the country that started sending clothes and they just didn't know what to do with it, so they just threw it in the Centenary Room. Because I mean, guys literally had nothing to wear. There was just a different vibe on campus, which is kind of the personification of what Lee is. It's a big family.
Little church in Kentucky just spontaneously sent me a check. And you know, it doesn't sound like much in the big scheme of things, but it was a few $100s, right? $300 or $400. That's a lot of money from that little church. And anyway, what we did was we wanted to sit out and appeal to churches, and so we drove up there to his church, taped me talking to him, and 800 churches sent us money. And this one church in Alabama showed the video. They took an offering. I got in my car, drove back home, didn't think about it. He said, I'll send you, whatever we get, we'll count the money tonight. $41,000 in 1993. I said, did one person put $40,000 check in or something? He did. No check more than $1,000. All over that church, people writing $1,000 checks. If you don't think the Lord's trying to encourage you in a deal like that, then you're not paying attention. Nobody thought the guys from Hughes Hall had maliciously set the fire, but they thought it was some kind of prank. Maybe they'd done fireworks and it went bad. Anyway, turned out not to be these guys. Turned out not to be, thank God, a candle, which is the single most frequent cause of dormitory fires. Turned out not to be bad wiring in the building, which is the next most frequent cause. Turned out to be pure arson, plain and simple. These guys were arrested, they were tried in federal court, they were sentenced, they went to prison.
You can't go through something like this and not be changed. It's like almost everything that I do out in the world now for good was shaped and molded while I was at Lee, regardless of a dorm burning down, but also 'cause it burnt down, right? Like, for me.
With the combination of the insurance and the money we raised, we restored everything the boys had, and we built Atkins Ellis with cash. And when school opened in August, we had a brand new dorm full of boys. All that was remarkable in the life of the school. You know what, it kind of created a feeling that, okay, we can take a lick and keep on ticking, you know? But the second thing is it jumped us across Parker Street. From day one, I wanted it to be beautiful and I wanted it to be traditional looking.
One of the first academic buildings is the music building, which we look at it now, it's kind of small. You compare the music building to the School of Nursing or to the science building, his confidence in our size and our continued growth and what's good to invest in has really grown over the years as well.
We've never had a big master plan map that shows out here and you got the hatch and you say, you know, now 15 years from now, out in here, that's where we'll have our engineering school. We've never done that. We've never planned more than one project out.
Period from 96 to onward, when we're establishing the university, is where it really began to pay off. We were ready to get on board with, you know, his efforts to really expand the academic programs.
And we were growing 10% a year. Our enrollment was doubling. We had students hanging from the rafters, and we were building curriculum as fast as we could, adding new majors, adding new grad programs.
A core task force was put in place to revamp our general ed core. Out of that came a brand new freshman seminar called Gateway, a full-blown study abroad program called Global Perspectives. Students were now doing capstone courses, senior students in their majors.
Another thing that we did during that time was add the service component to the curriculum. We have always wanted our students to see how to use their academic skills to make the world a better place.
So this whole idea of redemptive service, the institution really wanted to make sure that we inculcated that into all of our students and make it part of the educational program.
It was intense. It was a time of change, and I think that framework set us on a path to growth we're still experiencing.
We were emerging from our past and definitely moving towards something that was much more significant.
We had a sense we were going someplace, we were going in the right direction. And then pretty soon people started to recognize us too, and to say good things to us about Lee.
Invigorating for all of us to start to see the possibility of this place becoming what so many of us thought it could become.
Changing from Lee College to Lee University has two pieces. One is just the name, and the other is the structure underlying the name.
Two people voted against it on the faculty, and I was one of them, me and Don Bowdle.
Don Bowdle said no. And his explanation was, I know a university when I see one and we're not one.
Yes, I have to say, I think it was a good decision. I'm not always right, apparently.
So we renamed ourselves Lee University, restructured as a university. At that time, we had 4 colleges, which we continued for many years. We've now added nursing and business.
Basketball always stirred enthusiasm. Nothing like it, is there? The enthusiasm of youth bursting into frenzy. The emotions of youth being tested in the heat of competition.
Athletics has really blossomed at Lee in the last 30 years. I've often wondered, what did they do back at BTS in Sevierville? There's very little record of any kind of athletic activity. We know they didn't have intercollegiate athletics, of course. There is evidence of organized intramural activity starting in 47, or when they came to Lee, and then this gradually morphed into something we now call intercollegiate athletics in the early 60s.
Well, in 1959, we had our first intercollegiate sport, men's basketball. And then in 1967, we joined the National Christian College Athletic Association with NCCAA. We were one of the charter members, and the first year we actually won the national championship. We were a member of the NCCAA until 1974, when we also joined the NAIA. When Dr. Conn became president in 1986, we had 3 sports.
We only had men's and women's basketball and golf, men's golf. And, we were NAIA, and we were pretty good.
Within his first 2 years, he added 6 sports. And we added 3 more in the 90s and 6 more after the turn of the century. So we went from 3 to 18 sports.
My philosophy on athletics is, if you're not winning, you're losing. And if you're not winning at athletics, you're losing at more than just athletics.
We won 4 straight national soccer titles from 08 to 11. The conversations were, do we want to stay where we are, or do we want to take a challenge and move up to NCAA and play against the better teams? And that was the decision that we had to make.
You can't trade on D2 athletics to get your name recognition out. What you can do is create the impression among people who know you already that you operate with a high level of quality. We win. We're competitive for championships, we're good. That becomes a part of their self-concept as Lee students. In the same way that when Jordan Smith wins The Voice, every Lee student and alum feels like we won The Voice.
Somebody to
cannot possibly overstate the degree to which we are marinated in music at Lee University.
Music has definitely been our vehicle all the way. You trace it all the way back to 1918. We were singing about Jesus and also telling people about Lee.
It's obvious how much music has changed since those early photographs you see of guys with the guitars and the women with the accordions. I have no idea what Nora Chambers did after they had that first class on January the 1, but I'll bet you before the week was over, they sat around and sang. What may not be as obvious is how much music has stayed the same, in that it's the music of the heart and music connected to worship and music connected to our sense of God in our lives. And I don't care if it's chorale singing one of these great hymns, or if it's Redback Hymnal Night that we have once a year in the chapel, or if it's Danny Murray and voices out there with a camp meeting, or if it's just what we hear in our heads. Music is connected to our spirituality and it's connected to our worship.
Oh, praise the name of the Lord our God. Oh, praise home to my Jesus. Ain't that good news, my Lord in red rose. Singing, there is nothing that's impossible. What a wonderful name it is. What a wonderful name it is. The name of Jesus Christ, my King. Ride on, King Jesus. No man cannot hinder me. Ride on, King Jesus. Ride on. No man cannot hinder me. No man cannot hinder me.
I quickly discovered once I became a student here that both the classical and the worship traditions were both very strong. I think the classical tradition and other traditions interact in ways that are healthy for both sides of the equation. We continue to explore it, and we push and we pull, and we think that it's possible to do both well.
And the other thing that's the same is that music is the way we show ourselves to the public. Music is the way we get in the door. Music is the way we sell ourselves. Music is the way we demonstrate our combination of excellence and heart. It's a powerful part of our recruitment.
So for many years, Lee singers traveled and told the Lee story. But now campus choirs on the road, evangelistic singers are on the road, Ladies of Lee are on the road, symphonic band is on the road, and of course, Voices of Lee. So all those groups are going to churches, they're going to youth events, they're going to Christian schools.
Many years ago, we would track the tours of our choirs and see that students would come from the same states where choirs were touring. So the recruitment, students recruiting students, man, that's as old as Lee.
I definitely think for Lee students and Lee alums to be on these national talent shows or singing shows or music shows has a very strong effect.
Got a call from NBC. We got this show. It's for a cappella groups, and we think Voices of Lee are perfect for it. We got to learn a little bit about what the power of TV and the power of the internet and how it can serve us. Phil Stacey had already been on American Idol. Then we had Clark Beckham on American Idol. Then we had Jordan Smith on The Voice. Then we had Brooke Mills Simpson on The Voice. You know, people begin to believe we have a factory over here, you know, putting out students that are super talented, and we do.
The cumulative effect of all that over a long period of time can transform an institutional reputation. And that's what we've seen happen at Lee in the last 30 years.
Lee has, I think, always welcomed those people from the margins, given them the opportunity to succeed, and then tried to find ways to help them succeed. And I think this is an important part of what makes Lee Lee.
We do keep the price very low. And that's one of the tensions at Lee, keeping the price low enough, but still generating enough revenue that we can really have a quality program.
compared to other institutions, especially other private institutions, Lee's very affordable. And that's been true from the very beginning, that Lee's tried to remain accessible to a large number of people and not lock people out simply because of the dollar.
We have retained this idea, the old Jesse Capshaw idea, that we want people to come to Lee, whether or not they have huge academic gifts.
Students who did not excel in high school and students who are not already thoroughly grounded spiritually can find the challenges they need and the help they need to become all that they can be.
If we had the resources, I would have a totally open admission policy here at Lee. And I would say, give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses. I would say, you know, if you want to go to college, come on.
But what makes us different is our commitment to Christ. It is our commitment to faith, it is our commitment to community, that this is what sets us apart.
2 core values: commitment to Christ, the lordship of Christ, and commitment to excellence. Everything else can get subsumed under those things. So the overarching value of Lee, to me, is for all of us here to constantly explore and question and seriously address this question of how can I be excellent in ways that matter, and how can I be committed to the lordship of Christ in ways that matter, and how are these things connected and woven together in my own life?
We want to instill in our students a deep commitment to Christ, and out of that commitment to Christ, a deep commitment to serving their fellow human beings.
We have no interest in preserving the past for the sake of the past, but rather to draw on the past and keep what's best and move on into the future.
Lee is an institution that is alive. There's a terrific amount of forward-moving energy at Lee.
What's next? What will be the next dream we have? What can we accomplish that will really make a difference? How can we become an institution of significance?
At various points in my time here, I would sit and think about the people who came before me. They've left a legacy, and I just hope that the ones who come after me and my peers will find us faithful, just like we found the others faithful.
For 50 years, I've had the experience of working with really remarkable colleagues, people who have shown me how to do what I want students to do, which is integrate faith and learning. People who have shown me how to really live a life that is an academic life and yet in the context of service.
One college president once said, the task of a college president is to put young men and women in the presence of individuals who will transform their lives. We hope some faculty member or coach or RD or staff member or administrator will cross that student's path and have a transforming impact.
Lee helped me understand God and understand the world in a broader way, in a way that became very real to me. But I can't imagine the person I would be without Lee. It's opened so many doors, and it's helped me find myself, and it's helped me find my voice.
God has used Lee in my life, and I know I'm just one of thousands.
It's the sense that I have fulfilled a calling here, and God was behind it all.
I am so grateful for the time that I've been at Lee, for those 50 totally astounding years when everything changed and everything, I had an opportunity to have a hand in inventing the new Lee. I got to be there for that and for setting it on the course for the next 100 years. What a great opportunity. What a treat.
I believe in Lee University exceptionalism. There's something special at work. And if we can now preserve that special thing in this period of greater resources, greater respect, more opportunities, we can change the world. How's that for an old-fashioned idea?
See the eyes fall like rain, and the ears push on like a train. One by one we parade as we learn to count the days. Send me forth and shake me free in this vast eternity. 100 years and 1,000 more, we will meet upon that shore. We'll meet upon that shore. See the fields white with grain. Hear the call to carry his name. One by one we partake as we learn to count the days. So send me forth and shake me free in this vast eternity. 100 years and 1,000 more, we will meet upon that shore. Yes, we'll meet upon that shore. Send me forth and shake me